Okay, we're going to look at Elijah today. We're still in Hebrews 11:32, where it mentions the prophets. And the specific prophet that we're going to look at is Elijah. But before we start, prayer request for this group. As Lyle mentioned, my sister-in-law's cancer has returned, so keep that in mind. Also, Shirley Broyles is, she's really scared about the kidney infection that she's having because there seems to be some kidney failure. So that is serious concern. How are you guys doing? Doing? Okay, it's good to see you. Are there other concerns about this group?
I had another CAT scan done Thursday, but I don't have the results yet. They checking my liver.
Okay.
That's what they're checking over there.
Okay.
But that was one that they did check.
Okay. Jerry's situation, and I'm sure there are others that we need to think about. Rick, would you lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your love for us and consistency, patience. Lord, we are mindful of some people in the congregation sick in relationship, Lord. We know that you know those people, you know their hearts, and we know that you will do your will with them. And Lord, we just ask that you continue to be with them. Lord, we ask that you be with us today as we're in this class, give you the praise and teach us. And Lord, just help us to hear what he says and help us to understand your word. We love you so much for everything. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
As I've already mentioned, the prophet, we're still in that Hebrews 11:32 verse that talks about, it ends with the mention of the prophets. The prophet that we're going to look at is Elijah. On your book, page 60, I've underlined some things that I'm going to read. It's in the top paragraph. Faithfulness is the stuff on which we build our lives. We depend on it. We look for it in our routines, count on it in our families, and value it in our friends. Faithfulness reveals itself over a lifetime. It is consistent, regular choice to do the right thing. Then down in the workout section at the end of the first paragraph, Elijah consistently chooses to be full of faith among a people who hop back and forth in their affections in worship. Elijah steadily, dependently, regularly, deliberately, faithfully chooses God. And that's pretty much a good summary of who Elijah is. He chooses God. Let's kind of look at where Elijah is. At about 922, the kingdom split. Solomon dies. The United Kingdom of Israel becomes the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom is led by Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Jeroboam the first. Jeroboam the first makes a political religious decision that is going to be a problem for all the kings of Israel. That political decision, that political religious decision is what? He builds 2 calves. He places one at Dan and one at Bethel. He says, "These are your gods that brought you out of Egypt." Not a complete abandonment of the worship of Yahweh. Keep that in mind. Not a complete abandonment, but it violates the second commandment. Okay? Time has moved on since Jeroboam, son of Nebat, since the death of Solomon. We're about 60 years later, give or take a few years. The northern kingdom of Israel has had 6 kings already. They have had 3, 4 dynasties, depending on what you do with the 7-day rule of Zimri. Do you count that as a dynasty? I don't see how you can, actually. So you have that. But Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, has introduced this calf worship. And almost at every end of a king's reign in the northern kingdom, they continued in the sin of Jeroboam. Now, in chapter 16 of 1 Kings, around verse 26, you're introduced to the 4th dynasty, the dynasty of Omri. Omri is said to be one of the worst. Now, let's point out some of the things that he did. He reigns for 12 years. He makes Samaria the capital of the northern kingdom. And this is probably a good decision. It's high up on a hill. He's already thinking of the Assyrian invasion, how it can be protected against the Arameans, the Syrians that are coming his way. But verse 26 of chapter 16 says this: "For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam son of Nebat, and in the sin that he caused Israel to commit, provoking the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger by their idols." Verse 25 says, "He did more evil than all who were before him." Then his son takes over. And again, his son, because he marries Jezebel, the daughter of Ithbal, the Sidonians, who is a priest of Asherah and Baal, introduces Baal worship into Israel. Now, Baal worship was on the edge anyway when we studied the book of Judges. It was always there. But with this, there is an erection of a temple of Baal in the city of Samaria. The concern for renegade worship, or I guess renegade worship is the right word, or deviant worship, goes out the window at this point.
But he still does like the trying to think.
Yeah, the concern for the calf worship,
That's what I was thinking.
which is a form, a deviant form, okay? Renegade form of the worship of Yahweh is lessened. It goes out the window with the introduction of this full-fledged Baal worship. Now, you're looking at me like you've got three heads.
That sacrifice is bad.
Yeah, it was bad. It continues to be considered bad. Notice they continued in the sin of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Goes all the way through the northern kingdoms. But Elijah does not focus on the calves. He focuses on the worship of Baal and Asherah, his consort. Do you see that? Syncretism is bad. And that's kind of where the Israelites find themselves. They're wanting to worship God, Yahweh, and they're wanting to play with Baal. Because, Baal's the fertility god. Baal is the god of the storm. God, he is the God that makes sure your crops grow. So, let's not offend him. And then there also may be some problems with language, because Baal means something like my husband. Who's the husband of Israel? Okay, so there may be some misunderstanding with that term. Because later on in the minor prophets, you'll no longer refer to me as my husband. You will no longer do that. Okay, so this is the scene in which Elijah comes in. His first appearance is in chapter 17 of 1 Kings. His first announcement, we know nothing about Elijah. We know he is from Tishbe in Gilead, and maybe, possibly, theoretically, from the tribe of Gad. Don't know that. We don't even know precisely where Tishbe is located. I have some theories, but we really don't know. His name means Yahweh is God. Notice he's from the East Bank also. Yeah, did I get that right? I said East Bank. I'm not sure, but he's on that other side of the Jordan. At other times, heritage is spelled out, but it's not here. And there may be a reason for that. Notice that he seems to have easy access to Ahab, the king. He comes to the king and he says, there is not going to be rain or dew in Israel for these years. The spokesman of God in the face of the worship of Baal, opposition to Baal, who is, understand, the God of the storm. Yes, the God of rain. The God of rain, the God of fertility, the God of the crops. It's not going to rain. It's not even going, the dew is not even going to come down. Now, keep in mind that according to Deuteronomy 11:13 through 17, and also Deuteronomy 26, verse 18, drought is a promised condition for unfaithfulness to God. Yeah. Yeah. Haggai 1, verse 11, other passages. So, he has announced this. There would be no rain except by my word. In Israel's climate, there's 2 times of rain, basically. There's the early rains, which occur in autumn, around October through November. And this is the time of planting. Then there's the early rains. The later rains, which occur in the spring. Somewhere around the time April through May, or some dated earlier back to March. And this is the time that the crops are maturing, they're growing. Elijah apparently makes this statement in October of a certain year. So there's already been a 6-month period of low rainfall or no rainfall. Then, maybe in Ahab's mind, the people's mind, well, timing's just a little off this year. And then it goes past November. It goes into the next year. And then it goes into the next year. And the next. So things are getting pretty barren. Elijah makes his announcement and then he disappears. First, he goes to a place called the Brook of Cherith. He's fed by ravens. Now, does that cause a problem? Does it cause a problem? What about the food loss?
Is a raven unclean?
A raven's unclean. According to Leviticus 11, I think it's verse 26. 11, 15, and 20. The ravens are unclean birds.
Because they're
Scavengers, yes. But these birds are used by God. They come daily and feed Elijah. They come daily. Then, after the brook dries up, he's sent to a widow's house. Not only a widow, but a widow in Zarephath, which is in the territory of Tyre, which is in the territory of Ethbal, which is in the territory of Jezebel, its origin, which is in the territory of Baal, chief god there. Elijah is sent there to a widow of Zarephath. And this widow is in desperate plight. She's only got a scant amount of flour, meal, and a little bit of oil. She's out gathering sticks to make the last meal for herself and her son. The last meal, because that's all she has. And this character, Elijah, shows up and says, give me a little bit of water. And oh, by the way, make me a cake. She only has enough to make one cake. But somehow, she is convinced to do what Elijah asked. And Elijah promises that for as long as the drought lasts, that scant amount of meal and oil will not run out. Talk about praying for our daily bread. That's there. Faith. Faith. And the woman's faith develops over time. She's seeing it as she makes the cake for Elijah. There's still more there. When she makes the cake for herself and her son, she gets up the next morning. There's flour and oil to make the cake that day, and the next, and the next, and it continues. Then the boy gets sick, and the boy dies. And she's devastated. She's questioning. Did you show up here to point out my sin? Did you show up here to punish me for my sin? And we might wonder, is she thinking like this? Well, I haven't been paying as much attention to Baal as I should have. Did you ever see it in that light? Or is there some other thing in her life that she's thinking about? But anyway, Elijah, this is the first of 3 restorations of life in the Old Testament. It's the first of 10 in the whole Bible. But it's the first in the Old Testament. Elijah takes the boy upstairs and prays, and the boy is restored to life. That's an abbreviated part of the story, which he takes him back down. And again, the woman's faith is increased. The book of James says of Elijah that he was a man like us, but he was a man of prayer. And it uses Elijah as an encouragement to prayer. And I don't know about you, but my prayer life could use serious improvement. Okay? It's just me. But Elijah is a source of encouraging us to pray. He prayed about the rain. He prayed about the boy. He will pray at Mount Carmel, chapter 18. This is when Elijah shows back up in Israel. He's met by Obadiah, who is I don't know what his title is, but he's a chief steward of Ahab's household. He is a servant of Yahweh, but kind of secret, I guess, because of where he works. He's hidden 100 prophets. And you got to keep in mind that these 100 prophets are like from the school of the prophets that Samuel developed. So he's hidden these prophets when Jezebel decided she's going to exterminate them. Jezebel is not satisfied with syncretism. Jezebel wants complete Baal worship. Ahab may be on the fence, but she is not satisfied with that. So, Obadiah sees Elijah, and he says, when Elijah tells him to go get Ahab, I'm not really sure about this. We've looked everywhere for you. He has made people take oaths. He has questioned them severely. And if I go and tell him you're here and you disappear, I'm dead. And, Elijah sort of has that tendency to come and then disappear. He made that announcement, and then they couldn't find him for 3 years. When Ahab meets him, he comes up with this phrase, "You troubler of Israel." And this is a phrase that came from the book of Joshua, the sin of Achan. Achan was the troubler of Israel. So, Elijah gives as good as he got. I'm not the troubler of Israel. You are, basically. You have led the people into sin. So he proposes this contest between the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah and himself. Whichever God... it's on Mount Carmel. There's a reason for Mount Carmel, maybe. Mount Carmel was kind of a contested place between Israel and Tyre. The portion of the mountain that the contest was held on was probably Tyre's control, therefore Baal's control. It was also believed among some that that's where the gods, Canaanites, that was the home of the gods. So, let's do it here. And whichever god comes out on top is the one you're to serve. Now, Baal's prophets are given the first choice, first part of the day, and at the end. Elijah makes it impossible for fire to burn. He soaks the wood, he soaks the bull, he digs a trench around the altar that's full of water. Oh, and by the way, before you get to that point, was there supposed to be an altar there? Not technically. But again, the corrupt, renegade, deficient worship of Yahweh is better than no worship of Yahweh at all. And that kind of messes with our head. Why? Because we're so precise on order. But it didn't make it right. But it was better than no worship of Yahweh at all during this time period. Yeah. So, the fire comes down. It consumes the sacrifice, the wood, the rocks, and the water, and even the dust that's around that altar. You would think, and then of course the destruction of the prophets of Baal, which is in keeping with Deuteronomy 13, that anybody that leads you away from the worship of Yahweh is to be punished. You would think that the people would have automatically said, we're done with this. But they don't. Jezebel is still in power. Ahab's still king. Jezebel threatens the life of the prophet. But overall, and we're going to end it here, Elijah was faithful day by day. Even in his despair, he is still faithful. He is still faithful. Okay, that's enough. Let's stop.